Hello, my name is Austin Fire, and guess what? Book review time! We're talking about the new position of my lighting is very bad for this. Jeez, because I guess it wasn't much different before, but man, that reflected for a second. That really reflected because the lights are the lights right there relative to my face, right? So anyway, we're talking about The Word in the Void, Running with the Demon. I can't aim that book. There we go. And I'm actually really excited to talk about this one. Trying to think what to say. Because honestly, this was an awesome book. Actually, probably better than I remember. Because I remember liking it immensely, but this is definitely better than I remember. Maybe the first time it's happened on all these book reviews, because most of the books I've been reading, they were either the same, like it instilled the same sense of I'm really happy reading this, or this book was slightly more disappointing than I remembered. But this is the first book where I think I actually enjoyed it more now that I'm older than I did when I read it when I was I think I read this when I was 20 or something. I read it about 12 years ago or so. I remember I was probably maybe closer to 18, 19 maybe. So that was, so it was more recent. I didn't read it when it was released back in 1997. Yes. I didn't read it back when it was released back in 1997. Partially because I never would have realized, especially as a kid, when I was only 8, that this would have been related to the Shannara series, in addition to the fact that, I didn't start reading Shannara until I was 12. But we're going to leave that aside. So obviously I didn't read it back then. I didn't read it for a while, because I didn't realize it would have been part of the same series. And in a lot of ways, you can kind of tell it's not part of this. It wasn't originally intended to be part of the same series. From what I understand, from what I've read, apparently it wasn't. Apparently The Word in the Void was not. It was just going to be its own independent trilogy of books written by Terry Brooks that wasn't going to be related to Shannara at all. And you could tell that he kind of decided, maybe kind of laterally, to make it essentially officially part of it, to make this the prequel to the Genesis of Shannara and everything. You could tell, and honestly, this is actually, I don't know how to explain this without sounding like being really mean, but you can kind of tell that this is actually kind of where Terry Brooks kind of sort of makes a mistake. I don't remember if it's explained later on in the Legends of Shannara duology. I don't think so. If I recall correctly, that story is easily one of the most useless stories in the entirety of Shannara. It's enjoyable enough to read, but it doesn't tell a story worth telling, really. But you could tell that there's a disconnect between The Word in the Void and the broader Shannara saga. In no small part because of The Word and the Void. The pseudo-deific beings, that are having their cosmic struggle, between each other. The simple fact of the matter is this struggle is pretty much entirely absent in the broader Shannara saga. Even though Terry Brooks had multiple series where he could have incorporated it more clearly, the best he does is, and I never would have caught this when I was reading him originally, but there are oblique references to the Word by Coghlan, I think at least once, in the Heritage of Shannara. I know that there is an oblique reference, I don't remember where it was, to the Word in the Voyage of the Jewel Shannara, and the King of Silver River remakes a oblique reference to the Word in the High Druid of Shannara. And that's it. Just little references that kind of tie it together, but don't really mean anything at all. Because they don't define anything, it doesn't change scenarios, it doesn't mean anything. And the Void as a antagonistic force is totally absent as well. There's no evidence that the Void exists. There's no demons of the Void. There's no Knights of the Word anymore in Shannara. And I must admit, like, reading this again and realizing how much I actually really enjoy that interplay. I think maybe that's because, because I have my Christian beliefs and everything. I think that has a strong impact on how I perceive, like, battles of good versus evil. Though admittedly, it's a little more ambiguous. It's not like the word is good, and the void is evil. It's just that there's a little more ambiguity in there. Not in the overall cosmic struggle, but just in the general how it's fought on Earth. So I guess I connect with it on some level, but seeing, like, how good it is, seeing how, like, the demon, it was once a man, and the way he subverts people and the way he manipulates events to his own ends feel very human. There's nothing that says, like, the demon is far and above everyone in terms of his power and his ability and his knowledge and everything. He's basically just a man who's been granted a lot of power, and he takes advantage of little things that he can do. And actually, that's the book's greatest strength. It's subtlety, It's not about a druid fighting a horde of demons or the shadow and taking over the four lands. It's about one man, John Ross, one demon. The demon, he doesn't have a name. And Nest Freemark, and the people around them and how they're impacted by these events. But the events are small, Derry Howe and Junior Elway and their attempts and their manipulation by the demon to plant bombs at the 4th of July celebration and the Midcon steel plant. Like they're little things. They have relatively small bombs, they're not, like, engaging in some mass act of terror, Evelyn Freemark's death, Nest's grandmother, when she's killed by the demon, she dies in a way that everyone's just like, she went crazy and had a heart attack. And it's like, I mean, she didn't, but no one knows the truth, and it's all just, it's all very small. And, you have all these little moments, these little incidents. You have the Scott family where Enid Scott is dating a very bad, abusive man, and her children are paying the price for that. And eventually Jared Scott, Nest Freemark's crush, gets beaten to a pulp and put in a coma, and there's all these little moments that feel so inherently natural. And I like it. I like the small scale versus the big scale stuff that the rest of the Shannara saga gets. And I kind of wish that maybe there was a little more of this in the rest of the Shannara saga. I wish there was a little more to it than that, where you just have these little moments where, a simple Knight of the Word, walks into a small town and tries to save one girl, because in pretty much all the Shannara, except for maybe Defenders is very small scale, but that's about it. In every other Shannara book series and trilogy and everything, there are big stakes, and the adventures are grand, and they go places and they travel to places, and it's just, there's nothing wrong with that, but Terry Brooks does such a good job exploring a smaller setting. The entire story here takes place, except for John Ross traveling to and traveling from Hopewell, Illinois. The entire story takes place in Hopewell, Illinois, and he does such a fantastic job of capturing the idea of a small Midwestern town, and and capturing the characters in it. Old Bob, Nest's grandfather. It feels like if you've grown up in if you grow up in a kind of a close-knit community, everyone knows an Old Bob Freemark, his grouchy wife Evelyn, and and the kids. Everyone kind of knows each other, and you know, and the community comes together in its churches, and you know, and all the town gossip is very local, you know, and there's talk of international events, but they seem very far away until they're not. And I love everything about that. Like, Terry Brooks does such a good job of capturing that, and I love that. I love that there's a sense of the local, rather there's a sense of the wider world, even in a very local setting. You know, I think that's really cool. I think it's really awesome. You know, I also like the structure of the book. I like how the book is structured by day, and it starts with Friday, July 1st. And I think it's completely ironic that I started reading this book on the same. So it's July, obviously, and guess what? July started on a Friday this year, and I started reading this book on that weekend, on the 4th of July weekend, and of course the entire story centers around the July 4th weekend, you know, and I thought that was really neat. I thought it was really neat and kind of cool, and you know, I always enjoy the little things like that, the little details that kind of come together, but you know, but that's what happened, and I don't know, I really enjoy. I just, you could tell that I enjoyed something too much, almost too much, if that's a word. You could tell I enjoyed something a lot, rather, when I actually don't have a lot of words to explain why I liked it. It's just because it kind of comes gushing out as a sort of a tidal wave of emotion. You know, I don't know why the tidal wave of emotion makes a pseudo farting sound, but we're not going to talk about that. But I like the book so much. I know I liked it before, but I love it now. And I like the way that Pick's world, Nest's world of, you know, like a Sylvan named Pick and an owl named Daniel and a ghost dog named Wraith, and on and on and on. You know, the way it clashes and yet simultaneously meshes with the, you know, with the real normal, not the real world. Obviously the magic's real here, but the normal world, the regular world, the world that, you know, everyone else sees. You know, I like the way the feeders are always in the background, and they're not an active threat necessarily, but they are there, and it's creepy. And this is where I got with when I was talking about the Voyage of the Juro Shannara, is that low-key, Terry Brooks is really good at writing horror. Because these books are obviously modern fantasy, but a lot of what Terry Brooks writes contains horror elements. They contains subtle horror undercurrents that make you feel dread, and they make you feel fear for the characters, and they make you feel fear in the setting, and it's good. You know, the idea of the Maentrog, which is the eldritch abomination imprisoned in the ancient tree in Hopewell's Park. You know, it's like, you know, it's like the idea that, you know, underneath the, you know, underneath everyone's noses, there is this, you know, there's this horrific creature. You know, it's just, you know, it's really, it's cool and it's well done, and I love the execution. I love the execution. You know, and I like the structure. Like I said, I like the structure of the book too. And one of the other things I like about the structure of the book is the fact that basically the story actually has like two climaxes. There's a climax on the night of July 3rd, and there's a climax on the night of July 4th. And if anything, the climax on the night of July 3rd, where the demon gets his victory, where he distracts John Ross, and he distracts old Bob, and he captures Nest, and he kills Evelyn. That is really I feel like that's the big climax of the story. I feel like that's the climax of the story that really kind of matters and makes a difference. And the second one, where the good guys, John Ross and Nest, actually win, is, you know, is a lot more, you know, is the one where it's just like, okay, we get our happy-ish ending. A lot of things happen, but we get our happy-ish ending, and you know, and the demon's defeated, John Ross moves on, all that stuff. You know, I think that was, you know, I like that structure. I like that there's, you know, I like that to really, like, punch up, to sell the dread and the fear and the tension. We get a first climax that is actually, you know, that is actually the bad guy wins, and it's so, you know, mostly wins. Actually, no, he wins entirely. Everything he wanted to do got done. You know, everything he wanted to do got done, and it's just, it's that's good. That's good writing. That's good writing, and it feels unique. You know, it feels like a unique outcome in a story. Not an outcome, but a unique plot point in a story for a lot of the stories that I read. You know, and it's nice to see a little bit of ambiguity and the tension rising properly, so that it's like you don't actually really know what's going to happen. Like you think that John Ross and Ness Tremark are going to be fine, but you're not sure after that night. You're not sure after the night of July 3rd. And that's really good. And finally, I'm going to mention something I really don't like, but this is entirely personal. And, you know, you're just going to... It's one of those moments again where I hate how much I relate to John Ross. I really do. Because John Ross's backstory is given. And in that backstory, basically, he goes to college, right? And he spends most of his 20s wandering about aimlessly. He doesn't really know what he's doing with himself. And he's semi-independently wealthy because his parents are wealthy. And so he's able to travel freely, because he's able to travel freely with their money. And, I mean, they're not very keen on the fact that, you know, as time goes on, they're not very keen on the fact that he's still wandering aimlessly, doesn't have a career or anything. And he travels to England, of course, and he goes to Wales, and I'm not going to try to pronounce any of the Welsh names, and also don't have the words in front of me right now. You know, but there he finds the lady, you know, the you know, who represents the Word, and she commissions him as a Knight of the Word. And it's very, you know, and it's a very good tale. You know, it's the sense of the mystical in the mundane, you know, in what is otherwise the mundane. And I hate how much I relate to John Ross, because I kind of feel the same way. I mean, sure, I have a job, and, you know, I got all my hobbies. I got this YouTube channel, I got the Twitch channel, and all that stuff. But, you know, it's like I don't know. I relate to that on the same level. You know, I relate to that on a similar level, as much as, you know, and unfortunately, like John Ross, who was like 28 or something when he became a Knight of the Word, I'm almost 33 and I'm still in the same boat. You know, and on the same vein, I also relate to John Ross's sense of loneliness, because of course, John Ross is not attached to anyone, because if he attaches to someone, then it creates a hindrance in his mission, because, you know, then he has, you know, because then he creates someone he's gonna have to protect, and he's gonna have to be, you know, that might distract him from his ultimate mission. And, you know, of course, he kind of has to do it because, by the way, another Star Wars parallel there, if you noticed, kind of feels kind of Jedi-ish. But, you know, I hate that parallel too, because I guess, I mean, that's not deliberate on my part, but guess he's also kind of like on the lonely, because it kind of also feels kind of lonely and doesn't like the unattached thing, and, you know, really wishes that there was a Josie in his own life. Anyway, but yeah, no, it's you know, I'm not trying to be too personal there. It's just I hate that, you know, like what, 13, 14 years after I originally read this book, and it's like, why am I relating to the things that I don't want to relate to? You know, it's like, why am I relating to the things that I shouldn't be relating to? You know, in my mid-30s at this point. You know, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I don't like that at all. But anyway, Running with the Demon. Great book. Absolutely recommend it. You know, still not my favorite. Elfstone's still my favorite, but absolutely one of the top books in the entire saga. And it's a good standalone story, too. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, leave a comment. I always appreciate those. Check out the Twitch channel, and I will catch you next time when I don't have the other book with me. Usually I flash the book in front of the screen, but when I move on to A Knight of the Word. Until next time, everybody.